Hello and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. We start off tonight in British Columbia with video shot from inside the blockades showing last week's RCMP arrests in the Wet'suwet'en pipeline conflict. And now a human rights advocacy group is calling for police accountability. APTN's Lee Wilson has more.
Last Friday, day 2 of raids on Wet'suwet'en and its supporters and the natural gas pipeline dispute was caught in video from inside the blockades.
By tactical officers with guns, they cut off the internet.
Slato, Molly Wickham, spokesperson for the Edmonton access point, explains police are outside the tiny house in the Coyote camp on a forestry road in Wet'suwet'en territory. An RCMP officer outside states there is an injunction in place. Officers break down the door with assault weapons drawn and proceed to make arrests. That same day, advocacy and human rights organization, the BC Civil Liberties Association, penned an open letter demanding RCMP stand down and leave the territory. Staff lawyer Veronica Martitius explains.
And to vacate unceded, unsurrendered Wet'suwet'en territory because the Wet'suwet'en peoples, the hereditary chiefs, they have maintained that RCMP do not have jurisdiction on their territory.
In late September, a Wet'suwet'en clan erected blockades as Coastal GasLink prepared to pass part of the 670-kilometer pipeline past the Wedzingwa on Maurice River. There was an increased police presence as tensions built, but then the RCMP set up a checkpoint controlling access up the forestry road. Enforcement of the injunction began last Thursday, resulting in 29 arrests, including documentary filmmaker Michael Toledano and photojournalist Amber Bracken. Toledano could be heard telling officers he's a filmmaker as they put him under arrest.
You know, yes, the RCMP are on sovereign Wet'suwet'en territory, but the RCMP still have to follow the law. And freedom of the press is enshrined in the Canadian Constitution, which is the supreme law that RCMP are charged to abide by.
On Friday, RCMP released a statement on arrests. The RCMP did not arrest anyone for being a journalist or detain anyone for performing their job. They were among those to whom the injunction was read, and they were afforded the opportunity to leave the structures. They did not identify themselves at any point during the dialogue with police, which lasted over 60 minutes. When police forced open the door and began to arrest those inside, the individuals then identified themselves as journalists. Media arrested during the injunction were among those released on Monday. Edmonton camp leader Slato, Molly Wickham, was released last night. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.
And staying in British Columbia, the journalist and documentary maker who were arrested in the Wet'suwet'en pipeline dispute were released from jail this week. The two were arrested by RCMP last Friday and held in jail over the weekend. A Prince George judge released photojournalist Amber Bracken and documentary maker Michael Toledano on the condition they comply with an injunction to stay away from the construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline and appear in court in February. Their arrests led to several dozen news outlets and press freedom organizations calling for their immediate release. According to a Gidimt'en clan, 10 people arrested in RCMP raids last week remain detained in Prince George. 1.3 million Canadian children were living in poverty in 2019, according to a new report from Campaign 2000. The top 3 worst areas from that report are in Manitoba, with more than half of First Nations children living in poverty. Michelle Karlenzig has more.
Canada is 54 years away from ending child poverty, according to projections from a Campaign 2000 report. The report, conducted by a coalition of 120 organizations, looked at federal ridings across Canada. Churchill-Quaytanook-Aski in northern Manitoba ranked the highest, with 64% of children living in poverty. The feds vowed to cut the child poverty rate in half by 2030.
If you're a baby born today, he's going to be 9 years old in 2030 and might be in the group for whom child poverty has not been reduced. So he, she, or they could grow up and be 18 years old before child poverty is eliminated on that schedule.
In the highest ranked areas, 3 are in Manitoba, with roughly 37,000 kids combined. Campaign 2000 started after the Canadian Parliament vowed in 1989 to end child poverty across Canada by the year 2000. That hasn't happened, and Director of Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says it's not because of a lack of resources or money.
The most important thing in this recipe for reducing child poverty is the political will to do it.
A local Manitoba report was released during the pandemic, which furthers the dire situation for Manitoba's youth. The Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth says the pandemic has caused absenteeism and high rates of mental health issues for youth.
We saw things like increased rates of solitary confinement happening in custody facilities. We saw things like restrictions on family visitation for young people who are in care of child welfare. And so really, kind of across the board, there were impacts on children and youth with respect to those measures that had to be brought in as a result of the pandemic and the safety protocols.
When it comes to changes in Canada for children in poverty, Robinson says things like childcare rates and helping parents stay working are significant ways to tackle the issue.
Parents of children living in poverty get most of their money from working. And if we can allow more people to work or work longer hours, that's going to make a difference.
According to the report, child poverty rates decreased by 0.5%, down from 2017. Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Over to Alberta now, where there has been a second death in a month at the Spectrum Temporary Shelter operated by Hope Mission in Edmonton. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
Last month, a man's body was found at the Spectrum Center in Edmonton. The former site of a racetrack and casino has been used as a 24/7 emergency shelter. The body was found in a fenced-off utility room and may have been there for weeks before being found. This week, there was another death at the shelter operated by Hope Mission, who have provided food and housing for those who need it since the Great Depression in 1929. Lauren Reed is the community liaison for Hope Mission.
This is just very tragic. Our hearts really go out to the family of this person who passed away this week, as well as to our staff. They care so much and love the people that we work with, and it's always really heartbreaking for them.
Reed says that rising prices and inflation have brought more people to their services.
It's rough out there right now, and we are doing everything that we can to support people in really difficult and vulnerable situations, and we're just really sad that this happened.
Judith Gale is the leader of the Bear Clan Patrol Edmonton Beaver Hills House. The Bear Clan are on the streets, feeding and providing resources to the less fortunate.
The last gentleman that met his demise in that public space that was purportedly there to protect him, he definitely met his demise there. He was 36 years old, and he was a loved member of his family, his community. And yeah, it's very, very sad.
She says she will lobby to have more information released when someone dies at a shelter.
We the public get to find out the W5s of a person's demise: the who, the what, the where, the when, and the how. That, especially if it's concerning public dollars in a public space, the public needs to know where that agency has failed our brothers and sisters.
Lauren Reed says Hope Mission is reviewing what happened to help prevent future deaths. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
All right, we need to take a short break, but still ahead, we'll tell you about new technology that can bring clean water to Indigenous and remote regions. Welcome back. It's no secret that many Indigenous communities across the country don't have access to clean drinking water. While in Alberta, an Indigenous-led organization has come up with new technology that can bring clean water to Indigenous and remote regions. This treatment plant is a new pilot project by Steel River Group's Water Care Company, and it's currently being tested on the Stoney Nakoda Nation west of Calgary. The province has committed over $300,000 to the project. Dylan Smart with Water Care Company hopes to see this in more communities in the future. He says this technology is cost-effective and portable enough for remote areas.
You know, too many remote and Indigenous communities across this nation face wastewater issues. And, you know, Stoney Nakoda is no different from that. So with this technology, we truly believe that we're going to make a difference in really supplying this technology to remote and Indigenous communities everywhere.
A wave of shock is rippling through the Northwest Territories and Western Nunavut this week, as expecting mothers are being told they will not be able to deliver their babies in Yellowknife as planned. Instead, they will be forced to go down to Edmonton. Our reporter Charlotte Moore-Jacobs explains.
So this is the baby.
Julie Ann Beaupre of Yellowknife is 9 short weeks away from her due date, but her plans to stay close to home were dashed this week as her doctor broke the news. Expectant mothers in the territory and parts of Nunavut with due dates from December 10th until February 21st will have to travel to Edmonton to deliver their babies.
I was extremely shocked. I was more of like, oh, well, how long have you guys known this? Like, if you knew this longer, why didn't you guys bring it to the attention of getting more people up here or finding more people to hire?
And there's financial challenges. Beaupre's partner may have to stay behind to work.
I have only been to Edmonton to the airport and to the mall. That is it. So for me to go down there, if I were to go down by myself, for me to go down there, I'm going to be lost.
The NWT Health and Social Services Authority told APTN Stanton Territorial Hospital in Yellowknife is facing staff challenges and can't offer birthing services safely.
We have maintained all efforts on recruiting. And in October, when it became, when I had an early indication that we might be in this situation, we reached out to agency support to support us.
But whistleblower Heather Heinrichs, president of the NWT Midwives Association, says Stanton hasn't done enough to recruit midwives. She says in March, the GNWT allocated $600,000 to support midwifery services.
We know that 4 full-time midwife positions have not been posted in Yellowknife. 2 positions were posted just last week. We don't know why recruitment wasn't started earlier, and we don't know for sure how that would have looked, but we do know that 4 full-time midwives working in Yellowknife could go a long way towards mitigating the impact of staffing shortages on the obstetrics unit.
Casey Adlam, president of Larga Kikmiot, an Inuit medical boarding home in Yellowknife, says each month they receive at least a dozen prenatal patients along with their escorts. But this is something Nunavummiut have been doing for decades.
You know, it's not good for anyone to have to go that far away from home to have a baby because it's difficult enough, and you have children at home that you're worried about. And because they can't travel after a certain date, they can expect to be away from their family for long periods of time. I think it'll give people an insight to see what it's really like from people from Nunavut traveling to Yellowknife to give birth.
And for Beaupre, in her final trimester, there's a lot of unknowns.
Pretty stressed out. I'm overwhelmed with the whole situation. Honestly, I don't know how to feel about it. Like, my emotions, and it's just a roller coaster that keeps just going up.
Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
It's been a year since members of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation erected barricades to stop sport hunting on a wildlife reserve that is on their ancestral land. Negotiations between Quebec and the involved communities have made progress, but some feel they are advancing too slowly. A story by Shushan Bécon, read by Lindsay Richardson.
These dramatic images are from last autumn, when the Anishinaabe Nation in Quebec mobilized to stop moose sport hunting on their territory. Blocking access roads to the La Vérendrye Wildlife Reserve generated serious consequences, such as verbal and physical violence from non-Indigenous sports hunters. A year later, it's much more tranquil here, but that doesn't mean that the harassment has stopped. These photos show pieces of moose found discarded on the edge of a forest path. Parts of the moose most Anishinaabe would never waste. Charles Radd says it isn't even the worst.
I've been hearing stories from individuals that were escorted and harassed by non-native hunters in the Zex outside the park, you know, and these are women and children that are being harassed and escorted out with guys with guns on four-wheelers. You know, this is still happening.
Last June, a 2-year moratorium on moose hunting was signed by the Anishinaabe and Quebec. According to Lucien Wabananik, a negotiator for a coalition of Anishinaabe communities in the region, the 2-year period will be used to study the state of the moose population. This work will be done in collaboration with Anishinaabe elders from different communities, as well as Quebec's Ministry of Forests.
Pour nous, l'objectif, c'est d'avoir un meilleur contrôle, une meilleure participation dans tous les niveaux décisionnels possibles. Donc, l'objectif, c'est d'avoir un contrôle de la réserve faunique de la Vérendrye par les Anishinaabe, soit une création, soit un partenariat avec la CEPAC ou et soit éliminer la CEPAC. On n'est pas nécessairement rendu là.
But one Anishinaabe community is not part of the negotiation table concerning the moose moratorium. Rat is disappointed that the Band Council of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, or ABL for short, have withdrawn from the negotiation table on the moose population.
This chief and council that's in ABL right now does not represent us. They do not speak to us, they don't consult us, they don't tell the people nothing.
What the Barrier Lake Band Council has done instead is sign its own framework agreement with Quebec. Their framework agreement also includes a 2-year moratorium on moose sport hunting, but it's also asking Quebec to commit to finish negotiating an implementation agreement. According to Chief Tony Wawati, this would help the Algonquins of Barrier Lake have a say on forestry cuts on their territory and also benefit from it.
And we need those economic opportunities for ourselves. And, you know, by signing such an agreement, it'll help, you know, build our economy. It'll help build, you know, the non-native economy, the regional economy. So those are the things that we have to take a look at, you know. You know, enough of this piecemeal approach. You know, we can't just live on programs and services.
For now, the moratorium for moose hunting for the 2021 and 2022 seasons has been established. Harassment aside, this can be considered a victory for Anishinaabe who depend on moose for food. But what will happen in 2 years when the moratorium is lifted and the moose population has not increased?
We'll still be here in the end. We're still going to do the same stuff. For us, if nothing is done, you know, we see no action on the ground, we will be taking action again come the end of this moratorium that Quebec has signed with the Algonquin chiefs.
A story by Shashan Bacon, APTN National News, La Vérendrye Wildlife Reserve, Quebec.
All right, we need to take one more break, but still to come, a new hockey clothing line is helping get more Indigenous kids in the game. Welcome back. An Alberta man is using his unique line of hockey clothing to help Indigenous kids play hockey and combat racism on the ice. Michelle Karlenzig has more on Smudge the Blades hockey clothing.
As someone who played junior level hockey, Harlan Kingfisher is no stranger to the struggles Indigenous youth face in the hockey community.
I know exactly how the struggles were, you know, with hockey fees and hockey equipment and all that stuff.
Kingfisher created Smudge the Blades, a clothing company that brings Indigenous culture to the skating rink. His brand ships across Canada and has been worn by 9-year-old TikTok sensation Washie Janot from Barrier Lake, Quebec. Through scholarships, Smudge the Blades has helped pay for some families' hockey fees. Kingfisher says the feedback from parents has been overwhelming.
Very overwhelming with just seeing parents, like their kids couldn't play hockey this year if they didn't get the fees. And then just seeing on messaging, even phoning, I phoned a couple of them just to hear or see the weight lifted off their back. And then them just say, thank you so much.
Kingfisher is also using his platform to call out racism in hockey. On his Facebook page, he passed on stories of racism like Ethan Bears and a young man named Keegan from Swan River, Manitoba. Keegan is a 16-year-old high school hockey player, and last month he says he almost quit the sport after parents and spectators yelled racist slurs at him.
It didn't make me feel too well, and I just kind of kept it to myself and just texted my mom what happened. And
Keegan's father, Roger Brightnose, says the support from Smudge the Blades helps the larger issue of racism.
It was really nice of them to do that, and like it created some exposure of how racism is really taking its effect in hockey for these young kids. So that was. It was really good to create some awareness for his story, not only him, but others as well. So.
Michelle Carlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Historic and meaningful. That's how a major archaeological discovery at Wanuskewin Heritage Park near Saskatoon is being described. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
If not for Wanuskewin's buffalo herd, introduced back to the park 2 years ago, a rare type of petroglyph may have stayed hidden. The herd's activity in the paddock last summer exposed the rocks just 800 meters from the front doors of the visitor center. Park founder Ernie Walker says it's an incredible find.
It's what we refer to as a ribstone. The engravings on this rock mimic or are a metaphor for bison. They're like looking at the ribs of a bison. And if you look down the central axis where you would have expected the vertebra to be, there's a little spirit figure.
In all, 4 stones and the rock used to carve the ribstone were found nearby. The discovery has deeper meaning for a member of Wanuskewin's Elder Council, Cy Standing.
This is very significant because when the bison came back and then they uncovered the rock, and that's very significant and very sacred for us. That tells us, that gives us a sign that there's good things to come in the future.
The discovery of the stones helps Wanuskewin live up to its name, which comes from a word for 4 stones. The park also hopes the find will help achieve the goal of becoming a designated UNESCO World Heritage Site. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
That is quite the discovery. All right, that's all we have for you on this edition of APTN National News Weekend. For more news, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. And congratulations to our very own Dennis Ward. He and his wife Courtney welcomed a healthy baby boy into their family this week. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.